Okay, hello everyone. We will go ahead and get started. I do see some people are still joining us, but we'll go ahead and begin. My name is Mimi Mudd, and I want to welcome you to the third webinar in our summer 2024 family webinar series. I'm the Assistant Director of Parent and Family Programs and Student Transitions and Family Programs. And tonight I'm joined by my colleague, Jennifer Powell, who is the Assistant Director for Student Financial Services. We're excited that you've chosen to join us for tonight's conversation, and I have some information for you all before we go ahead and get started. So first, we want to make sure you know how to submit questions during this webinar. You will notice that we've given you the ability to ask questions via the Q&A feature in Zoom. Our staff within Student Transitions and Family Programs will be helping to field these questions throughout tonight's webinar. So to make sure you all know how to use the Q&A feature, I'm going to ask you all to please share the place from which you're joining us tonight, and then we'll name a few of them on air in just a little bit. Second, we will be showing a PowerPoint created by our panelists during tonight's webinar. However, if you prefer to download this PowerPoint and follow along on your own, please use the link that we have just shared in the chat. As a note, in the chat feature, we'll be sharing links, email addresses, contact information, etc. throughout the duration of the webinar. Third, this webinar is being recorded live. Next week, it will be uploaded to the families.wusel.edu website. In a moment, we'll hear from Jennifer about Student Financial Services. If something Jennifer says sparks a question, don't forget to send us in the Q&A feature. And after the presentation, we'll move into that Q&A portion of the evening. So before passing things along to Jennifer, I'll share some of the places from which people are joining us tonight. So we have families tuning in from Birmingham, Alabama, St. Louis, Missouri, Baltimore, Maryland, Chicago, Illinois, and others. Now, since I know you all want to hear more about Student Financial Services, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jennifer.
Thanks, Mimi. I appreciate that. Again, my name is Jennifer Powell, Assistant Director at WashU here in Student Financial Services. So we're going to kind of just be talking about what you can expect, some things that'll be going along throughout the summer and things like that, just so that way we can go through what you can look forward to and kind of what's happening right now. All right, so first and foremost, our office has awarded over $135 million in institutional scholarships and grants. That is based on both merit-based aid as well as need-based aid, a little bit more heavily on the need-based aid side. Couple of other things to highlight as well is that there are 6 financial aid counselors that are assigned with our students for all 4 undergraduate years. So the person that you are assigned with basically from day one is the person that you're going to be as that main contact for all 4 of your undergraduate years. If you continue on to graduate school, then you'll have a graduate SFS counselor. But we do offer a really high personalized approach. And part of that is because we are assigned to students for all 4 years. So we get to know them, we get to know their situations, we get very comfortable with families being able to feel confident and comfortable reaching out to us to know that we are there as a support system. We have a counselor on duty schedule that you can pop into a Zoom pretty much any day of the week, Monday through Friday, and just ask a question if your counselor maybe is out of the office. But essentially, we are very highly personalized. So we do want you to reach out to us for any questions. That's what we are here for. We do have a couple of financing and payment plan options. First and foremost is our Partners in Education with Parents. We kind of call it PEP. It is a very, very popular program. We do get a lot of parents that'll reach out to ask a little bit more about that. Kind of just going into it a little bit, we have some options for both financing and prepayment that can lock in your current tuition and the current costs for this year. That'll kind of extend for all 4 undergraduate years to kind of help save as cost increase. Apart from that, there's also an installment payment plan that we're going to go over as well that just kind of talks about how to set that up, where to set that up. Our office also supports services that are related to federal work study. So if you have questions, if your student has been awarded any federal work study funds, that's what our office is here for, to answer those questions. We do also assist in student accounting and billing activity. We do have a student accounting office that does kind of manage mostly the billing aspect. However, financial services can also go through and see the bill and be able to answer questions about that as well. Our office does also offer iGrad Financial Wellness Platform. It is completely free for all of our students. It has an interactive best practices for budgeting, banking, understanding credit, debt management. It's a really, really great platform. It does have a budgeting tool on there that we often refer students to go and take a look at, so that way they can kind of budget refunds or just budget their federal work study funds. We also have that one-on-one assistance when talking about a budget to manage living expenses. So that means that throughout this iGrad program, if you're using the iGrad tool and you have additional questions, you can always reach out to your assigned counselor or even just someone in our office to kind of help go through that budgeting technique to see if what you're doing is working, or even just get some additional advice on what to tweak or kind of help out in that situation. First thing that we're going to go through is basically WebStack. This is pretty much, I would consider, kind of like the billing portal. It's where you can view and pay the online billing statements. Now, due to FERPA laws, all of the student accounting information is put in the student's name. So the student does need to add a payer, or basically give the parent the permission to both view and pay the bill. Students can also sign up for direct deposit for any e-refunds or any additional disbursements. This is also the area where you can add Bear Bucks to your campus card, which is separate essentially from your meal plan. And then you can also update your personal information. So if you're moving or updating a phone number, things like that, you can do that under the WebStack portal as well. In WebStack, there is a section called CashNet. Here you can see a screenshot of kind of what that web page looks like. This is for both parents, students, or whoever the student does authorize as a person to be able to view this. This website is where you would actually access that billing statement specifically. You'd be able to view past transactions. This is where you would make any payments that would be due or sign up for the installment payment plan as well. So essentially, once you log into WebStack, there is an icon for CashNet. You would click on that, and essentially this is the screen that you will see with all of those options on it. So the way that our billing system works is we essentially bill in 2-semester increments. So the only thing that is going to be on that bill to start off with is most likely going to be just tuition, fees, room, and board. Those are charged per semester. There may be some other slight things that are added onto there, such as like lab fees, books, things like that. But for the most part, each bill is for sure going to have that tuition and fees. And then housing and meals or room and board are basically going to be on there as well. In the fall, the bill came out on July 3rd. That entire balance would be due on August 20th. And then for the spring semester, that comes out on December 1st. And then that balance would then be due on January 20th. There is a 2% late fee on any unpaid balance per each month. So even though the bill comes out on July 3rd, if it's not paid by August 20th, then there would be a 2% late fee. Then come September 20th could potentially be another 2% late fee. So it is something that, like, even though we're billing in semesters, there are opportunities for you to be able to go through and make adjustments throughout the semester to get either balances paid down, set up a payment plan, or just figure something out with that as well. Now, some other expenses that are charged on a monthly basis. First, I'm sure most people have noticed that health insurance premium that's added. This year it is $2,580. That is billed only in the fall, but that health insurance essentially is for the entire year. So that $2,580 is a year premium, but it is only going to be on the July bill. You do have the option to go through the health insurance waiver process. September September 5th is the deadline for that. But essentially, if you have health insurance that can be used on campus instead of WashU's student health insurance, you can waive out of it. And in that approval actually does remove that $2,580 charge because you're therefore using your own health insurance instead of WashU's. The parents can receive a monthly billing statement, but again, this is only if they are set up with guest access. So that student does have to set the parent up for those receivables to be able to view the bill, make payments to the bill, things like that. Some other things that also might be charged throughout the semester are going to be things like lockout charges if students are locked out of their dorm room and needed assistance to get back in. I think it was like a $5 charge. Other things such as, like I said, lab fees, or there might be a specific material that is needed for a specific class. I'm going to use Adobe as just a really simple, simple thing for that. But basically, it would just show up as an additional charge on the bill. And then that next month would provide a fresh new billing statement that then would be due on the 20th of the following month. So for those payment options, you essentially have quite a few different things that you can do. First and foremost is whatever the balance is remaining after the financial aid has applied, you could then pay that final balance again by August 20th and therefore not have anything due. The university itself does not accept any credit card payments. So if you were to come into our office physically to make a payment, which you can do, we only accept cash or check. There is an installment payment plan option, which is in CashNet. What that does is it breaks up the monthly payment, or I'm sorry, the full payment into monthly installments. Right now, there's an option for up to 5 payments per semester, but the longer that you wait to set that up, there may be less payment amounts remaining. So for example, if you were to set up a payment plan today, you would have 5 monthly payments starting August 1st, September 1st, and going forward. Now, if you don't set that up until August 15th, your first payment wouldn't be due until September 1st, and therefore you would only have 4 payments left in that billing cycle because the spring semester generates a brand new bill that would have to have its own payment plan set up for that. Now, CashNet does charge a $40 per semester fee to enroll in that. Essentially, that is for their platform to be used. So if you do sign up for a payment plan via CashNet, you would have that $40 per semester fee to enroll. There are some parent loan options. WashU, like how I had mentioned, has the Partners in Education with Parents, our PEP. There is a multi-year option, a prepay option, an annual option, and then there's a combination of the two. PEP is kind of like a program where if you were to, I'm going to use an easy example, and let's say you don't qualify for any financial aid, but you want to finance. The multi-year option gives you the opportunity to finance all 4 undergraduate years. And what that does is it locks in today's current rates. So as costs increase, you are not burdened by that increase. It is based on your participation. So if you get 50% financial aid and then you use 50% in the PEP program, for 4 undergraduate years, you are basically only locked into that 50% of a tuition increase. So if our tuition goes up $10, you're protected of that first $5. The prepay option is kind of like the multi-year. If you have 529 account funds, or maybe there's, an extended family member that says, hey, I just want to pay for all 4 of these years, you definitely have the option to do that as well. Those that do wind up prepaying for all 4 undergraduate years have the same opportunity as the multi-year loan, where today's current rates are locked in for all 4 of those years. And the same premise applies as far as participation. So if you can only prepay 50% of all 4 years up front, you're locking in 50% of that rate. The annual is basically just an annual WashU parent loan. So it's something you'll have to apply for on an annual basis. It does not have a locked in tuition rate kind of promise that goes along with it because you're financing 1 year at a time. And then that combination is basically if you have 529 account funds or just savings saved up and you do want to finance as well, maybe you prepay 50%, you finance 50%, you're still participating 100% in the PEP program and you're still locked into that 100% participation rate. There are also federal plus loans for parents as well. This is actually applied for on the parent or on the FAFSA website. So the parent only has the option to finance 1 year at a time. Their interest rates are going to basically vary each year in the same way that federal student loans interest rates vary each year. But that is also an option as well if the parent themselves is wanting to kind of take on that financial burden for any gaps that financial aid did not cover. So let's talk a little bit about our federal work study program. The way that this works is it is a part of students' financial aid if they are awarded any need-based aid. It is not mandatory. Students do not have to work if they don't want to. It is essentially just a part of their package that we, of course, encourage them to explore if they have the ability to. Personally, I always tell students, I'm like, your academics definitely come first, but if you have some wiggle room and have the ability to work and you do need the funds, then absolutely take a look at this program. So to start with, students would wind up needing to bring all of their identifying information that you would just, applying for any general job. So there are going to be a requirement for I-9 documents. It's going to be things like your ID, either birth certificate or social security card or passport. Definitely take a look at those requirements if you're interested in working. And even if it's not part of the work study program and you just want to wind up getting a job in general, maybe you don't qualify for work study, this is still going to be documentation that you're going to want to bring with you. So that way, whenever you do wind up getting that job and hired, you'll have all of that available to be able to start. To find jobs, you would create an account in Handshake. It's an app that we use for both federal work study and non-work study jobs here on campus. That account is actually updated daily. So if you log in today and you get all set up and you don't see anything on there, don't be surprised. You might wind up logging in tomorrow and seeing 50 jobs posted. I usually say that during the summer, there might not be a ton of opportunities available, but as we get closer to the semester starting, there will be jobs that'll be posted on there. And it will outline if it's a job that's hiring only federal work study students or if they're just hiring in general. You'd want to contact the employers within the first week of classes. So if you're applying for jobs on Handshake, there's a job that you're interested in. Even apart from applying on Handshake, there should be a contact information that you could maybe send an email stating that you did wind up applying for that position. And you also should be hearing from those employers as well within a week or so of actually applying for that job. Now, the departments themselves actually decide which students they will hire. So you're still going to have to interview. You're still going to have to get hired. There may be other students that are applying for the same job. So it is basically just like having a regular job in general. You'll still have to go through that kind of vetting process. Again, a heavy importance on the document so that way it doesn't delay your beginning ability to start there. But otherwise, the departments themselves are going to be the ones that would actually determine if you would be hired on in that job or not. So if you're wanting to look a little bit more into the work study program, if you go to our website, which is financialaid.wustl.edu, there's a tab that is called How Aid Works. Underneath that is Types of Aid, and Federal Work Study is an option underneath that, which kind of just talks about the student employment information once you click on it. The I-9 documentation, I believe, was put in the chat, but that's basically the same thing that just goes over what you would need for that I-9 documentation. And again, like I had said before, there are plenty of job opportunities that are available for students that don't have any federal work study. So you don't have to have work study in order to apply for and get a job on campus. But again, there are some jobs that may only hire work study. So just kind of do a little bit of research as you're going through those job options. So outside awards, this is kind of one of my favorite topics to talk about. I actually found out recently that California is actually the only state in the United States that has a law that states that colleges cannot displace their own scholarship if you receive an outside scholarship. And I'm proud to say that WashU just doesn't do that, law or not. Getting any outside scholarships is not going to take away from your current WashU scholarship, merit-based or need-based aid. Now, there are regulations that basically state that no student can get more aid than what it costs to attend the university within that year. For the 24-25 year, that average is around $92,525. That means that no student can get more aid than that. So if you're really, really ambitious and you get a ton of outside scholarships and they keep stacking up and stacking up, once we hit that ceiling of that 92,525 or whatever the cost of attendance may be for that student, we do wind up having to displace the scholarship just so that way it can fit within that cost of attendance kind of bracket. Now, we would always kind of reduce things that would not benefit you as much first. So let's say you did receive federal work study funds, but then you're also getting an outside scholarship. We would rather you have the free money than have to earn the money. So one of the first things that we would displace would be your work study funds. So that way you can have the free money instead. But there are situations if we get close to that total cost of attendance where WashU scholarship would have to be displaced a little bit. But otherwise, if you're getting $50,000, let's just say in WashU scholarship and you get a $10,000 scholarship, you're now getting $60,000. We're not going to take 10 away from ours as long as it fits underneath that cost of attendance. Another thing that WashU does that I just absolutely love is we meet 100% of demonstrated need for all admitted students. So students that are coming in, when you fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile, you're going to have an expected family contribution number generated from that. That contribution number minus our total cost of attendance, that is what your demonstrated need is. And that is what we are meeting with no loans as well. That full need is met with grants, scholarships, and work study. I also forgot this 75,000 or less is actually a little bit outdated. We're actually now meeting that need with no loans for all families. So you don't have to have a family income of $75,000 or less. We are basically just meeting your demonstrated need without loans. Now, you can still take your federal loans if you would like to. It would be on top of our scholarship. We're not going to take away our scholarship because you need additional funding and you choose to do a loan to help bridge that remaining gap. So that would also be on top of the scholarship we are providing. And the other thing is that we will also go through and increase your aid if circumstances change. So I have families that fall into a situation, maybe a medical situation or a loss of income. They reach out to our office. We kind of go through our appeal process and get that documentation, and we recalculate the aid based on your current situation. We'll also recalculate your aid in the middle of the semester. There is no real deadline for that until we get a little bit closer to the end of the school year. So we're talking like May. Otherwise, if anything does wind up coming up, our office, we are definitely happy to kind of walk you through what we would need in order to recalculate your aid with those circumstances included. So I always recommend reaching out to your SFS counselor for really any aid-related questions, but highlighting this, any questions about your financial aid in your bill, if you don't think something looks right, or maybe you thought it was going to look a little bit different, definitely reach out to us. That's what we're here for. We can take a look at your account, take a look at your bill, make sure that everything's applied appropriately, make sure we're not missing anything. We can also go over payment and financing options as well with you. We actually have this really great tool on our website as well called our financial planning comparison worksheet, where if you fill out a couple of questions, it'll actually bring up this beautiful table that shows you each column of different options for any remaining gaps that you may have. I always direct families to kind of look through that. I've even went through that together with some of my families just so that way we can see what options work best for them. Also, like I had kind of mentioned before as well, our counselor on duty schedule. There is an assigned counselor in the AM and the PM every day, Monday through Friday, that you can be reached whether you walk into the office, you give us a call, or like I said, there's that open Zoom that you can click in and hop in there, and then the counselor will pull you in based on if they're already talking to a student or whatnot. And then also your specific SFS counselor has the ability to have set up Zoom appointments as well. Now on our website, you can click on like the contact us, you'll see the counselors and their names, and underneath there, once you click on it, it'll actually have a link to connect to our calendars where you can set up a meeting. I know some of us as well, me for an example, I have links at the bottom of my signature and my email where you can just click on that and set up a meeting with me directly without having to navigate to any type of website. And it will show you my basically availability on my calendar in real time. So whatever you wind up booking will automatically get put on my calendar, and then we can obviously chat during that time period. We also just kind of welcome walk-ins at any point in time in our location at the Summers Welcome Center. You can see kind of behind me, this is an inverted image, but ours is the really, really pretty glass building kind of up front. There is a one that's mirrored this, which I think is what this building is kind of looking like, the Schnucks Pavilion. But either way, the Summers Welcome Center, we are the only office in the bottom floor. So when you go to the basement floor, I guess you could say, or garage floor, we're the only office down there, and we're open Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. This is a list of the counselors. You can see Max McKee services students A through E, Ariel is F through J, Danielle does K through P, and I service students last name Q through Z. I know before that I had mentioned that we do have 6 counselors. We do have Andrea as well, who mostly services Westbridge students, and then Vicky, who kind of is kind of services all students. So like if I'm not available or if I'm out of town, for example, she might kind of pick up and kind of catch things up while I'm out, or things like that. So there are 6 of us, but only 4 of us are essentially assigned for all 4 of your undergraduate years. This is our main contact information. Our website, again, is just financialaid.woostel.edu. Our phone number is listed here, as well as just the general financial@woostel.edu email as well. We do have service center representatives. If you do email that financial@woostel.edu, even if you're maybe not sure if I'm your counselor or who your counselor is, or you just have some general questions, they can always forward that over to us as well if you're maybe not able to figure out what my email is.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I think that's all the information. Awesome. Thank you. That was super helpful. I will go ahead and get us started on the Q&A portion of our webinar tonight. So just a starter question and then a reminder to our student and family attendees to submit questions through the Q&A feature. So starter question, what tips do you have for students and their families as they have difficult conversations this summer about financial matters?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I say to reach out to your assigned counselor if you haven't done that already. You know, all of us, we really do try to make everything work as much as we possibly can. I love to say that I wish that we were magicians or had a magic wand that we could just say everyone, gets to go for free or whatever. But we obviously have limitations in what we're able to do. But as far as your counselor goes, that's kind of your main hub. If maybe you're not getting along with the counselor, or you just maybe feel more comfortable with someone else, you can always just ask to either be switched or talk to the counselor on duty or whatever. But at the end of the day, that's kind of our job, is to try to help you. If we don't have the ability to maybe increase your scholarship for whatever reason that may be, we do want to go over all of the options. Obviously, financing is kind of the last thing that any of us want to even touch or talk about. But there are some situations where financing is kind of the only option to help bridge the remaining gap. But the biggest takeaway I would say is just get in contact with your counselor, either set up a meeting, give us a call, come and sit down with us, whatever, so that way we can actually understand the situation so we can try to help you as best as we can.
Great, thank you. Okay, now getting into our pre-submitted and our live questions. So first one, if a student accepts federal work study, is it mandatory for them to work every single semester, or can they work only like either fall or spring semesters?
Yeah, so that 2,500 that's awarded is basically good for the entire year. So you can accept it in the fall and then not work at all until the spring. I had a student a couple years ago that had worked or accepted work study and did not work at all until the last like 4 weeks of classes. Totally fine. It's not required for you to even find a job. It's just an option for you to use. So you can accept it and then go the whole year and not use it at all. Or if you decline it on accident and later on you decide to accept it, that's fine. It's basically that 2,500 for the entire academic year.
Great, thank you. Okay, are students allowed to stack scholarships to cover attendance, housing, meal plan, books, etc.?
Yeah, it's great that we're kind of outlining it like this because when we're looking at our total cost of attendance, and I know that I had mentioned before that that's kind of the ceiling. So that 92,000 is kind of the most anyone can get in aid, but you're not really actually being billed for 92,000. You're only being billed for tuition, housing, meals. There might be the occasional lab fee or late fee or library fine, whatever. But at the end of the day, you're really only billed for those specific portions. So if a family has additional scholarships that are not only covering the bill, but would allocate towards books, materials, personal expenses, travel, things like that, they wind up receiving that scholarship in the form of a refund. So the bill has to be satisfied first, and then whatever aid is left over from covering the bill goes directly to the student. Typically, I would recommend direct deposit if you have the ability to set that up. It's a lot faster. Otherwise, it's a physical paper check that comes to our office and then you have to come and get it and all that fun stuff. So that refund can be used for other educational costs. So as long as you're kind of underneath that $92,000 ceiling, any additional aid that your bill is already being covered with would go to that student directly to use for those.
Perfect kind of segue. We did have a question about refunds.
Mhm.
So how would students and or their families know if they are receiving a refund? And is there generally like a how much they will receive?
Yeah, so if you were to log into Webstack, for the most part, most people's aid and bill are pretty much finalized. I kind of get into that a little bit later, but as far as as far as that kind of goes, basically, if you're looking at Webstack and it shows you a negative number, if it says like -50 or -200, that indicates that you're receiving a credit. So nothing is due to the university. Instead, your aid had actually covered all of the cost and now you're receiving that refund. So you can see it if you're looking at Webstack right now. And if you know for a fact your bill is 100% finalized and everything is good to go, those refunds actually generate automatically the Friday before classes start in each semester. So if you're going to get a refund in the fall, it'll come out later on in the end of August, right before you basically move in. And then the same thing in the spring and January, you would get that second refund. Where I say as far as like the bill is finalized and stuff, I know some people may be changing their meal plans right now, might be, switching housing, the health insurance is on there. Maybe people haven't went through the health insurance waiver process yet. So if you're not 100% sure if your bill is kind of finalized, or if you're not sure if everything has applied appropriately, definitely reach out to your assigned counselor so we can just double check your account, make sure you're good to go. And once that's all said and done, you'll be able to see that credit hanging out there in Webstack before it disperses.
Great, thank you. We did have a question from a student or family member about their specific bill. They're seeing a disparity. So they were wondering if it was finalized. So sounds like best thing for them to do is to reach out to their specific financial advisor?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the difference between our office and financial aid and student accounting is student accounting doesn't have access to financial aid, so they can see it applied to the bill, but they won't be able to answer any questions about how much the dollar amount is or what forms it's coming in. So that's really a great question for your assigned counselor, because we'll be able to pull up the bill and we'll pull up the financial aid to be able to see where that difference is coming from. Sometimes students wind up, choosing a higher costing housing, or maybe they're, assigned in higher costing housing. Maybe they only had a single available instead of a modern double, which is what the aid is based off of. And in that case, the assigned counselor would go through the bill, go through the aid, make sure everything matches up, and then kind of figure out where that gap came from or if there were any changes that were made. But yeah, the assigned counselor is your best bet to kind of just make sure that's good.
Great. And then kind of in this theme, when we were talking a little bit earlier about outside scholarships, is there a deadline by which people need to send outside scholarships to WashU?
We don't have a deadline for that. It does have to be within the same academic year, obviously. But there are a lot of scholarship foundations that won't even send the actual check to the university until like October or November. Most of the time, these foundations are wanting to make sure that they're past the add drop date. They don't want to send the funds to the school. The student winds up dropping out, getting a refund, and then not going back. So they usually don't even send us the money until around October or November anyway. But let's just say a student is, it's April and then the student gets an outside award. We will backdate it if it's meant to be applied to both fall and spring. It will backdate to apply to the fall semester, even though that semester is over with, might produce a bigger refund or an additional refund, or maybe that credit will just kind of roll over to spring and cover more costs. But there's really no deadline as long as we're in the academic year that scholarship needs to be applied to.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit to some questions we received specific to technology grants. So when and how will students be able to access their technology grant?
Yeah, so we actually will be sending an email out towards the end of this month. I'm not sure if it'll be officially the last week, because I know the last day of the month falls on a Wednesday. But we want the technology grant to be able to be used for tax-free weekend, which I believe, if I'm not wrong, is the 3rd and the 4th of August. So either sometime next week or the week after, all the students receiving the technology grant will get an email. It's a hefty email, just as a heads up. It's got a lot of info. Essentially, where you would order the laptop from would be directly from the bookstore, where you would pick up the laptop on move-in weekend or whenever you arrive on campus for the fall. I don't know if there is a shipping option. I know I've been asked that before. To be honest, I think that's kind of on the bookstore's ability if they can do that or not. I believe that they're kind of strict on you order it and you pick it up. I don't think that they offer shipping unless maybe you pay additional for that. But that email will go out, I believe, either next week or the beginning of the week after. So that way everyone knows exactly where they need to go to do it. They'll put in their student ID number when they go to check out on the bookstore's website.
And that answered another follow-up question about whether people can use their technology grant to purchase a laptop from the bookstore. So sounds like that is a yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next question about technology grant is who qualifies for a technology grant?
So any student receiving at least $1 of need-based aid, it is very specific that it has to be need-based aid. So if students are only getting merit-based aid from the university, unfortunately, they don't qualify for the technology grant. But any student getting any type of need-based aid from the university gets the technology grant. They'll be included in that email as well to kind of just go through what they would need to do to get it in the next couple of weeks.
Great, thank you. And kind of on that, I'm going to do a little plug for Student Transitions and Family Programs, our Bear Bulletin and Family Ties e-newsletters that just went out last night. Yes, on the 15th, we had a special shopping edition, and there's a section on there about the campus bookstore that tells you a little bit more about the technology you can buy there and some links to the bookstore. If I'm seeing some questions come in specific about what types of laptops they have, etc. So I recommend that y'all check that out.
I do also kind of want to add really quick too, since we're on the technology grant, there might be some students that are receiving these first time grants for families of income of 75,000 or less, which include the startup grant. That startup grant does also provide a $250 bookstore credit each semester. That can be used in addition to your technology grant. So if you're wanting a computer that's more expensive than the technology grant, you can use some of the startup grant funds towards that. That credit will automatically be at the bookstore as well. Anything above that, or if you want a really way more expensive computer that both of those things don't cover, that would be something paid out of pocket, but essentially using it during that tax-free weekend makes it as cheap as possible. So I always try to like get them to go towards that weekend.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, and then we did just have a question come in about how and when they'd be able to get books and supplies using their financial aid.
Yeah, so kind of two separate things on that. The families that are receiving the startup grant, those they get a $250 bookstore credit for fall and spring, as well as a $500 cash refund, both in fall and spring as well. That first refund, the $500 for the fall semester, I believe winds up generating the first or second week of August. You can use those startup grants, the startup grant funds for books, materials. If you're not going to qualify for the startup grant and you're just getting regular WashU need-based institutional aid or merit-based aid, those refunds will come in the Friday before classes start. So you would get that, again, hopefully via direct deposit. So it's right sitting in your bank on Friday, and then you can purchase books and materials throughout the weekend and then the first week of classes.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Okay, we did have a pre-submitted question that I know you discussed a little bit in your presentation, but just so we can kind of re-go over it. What do you recommend families do if their family finances change?
So biggest highlight, definitely talk to your assigned counselor. If your assigned counselor is on vacation or not available, you can reach out to any of us. But essentially with those types of situations, there are some guidelines that we obviously have to follow through when it comes to like a family situation changing. We will consider the financial aspect of that to recalculate aid. I'm going to use a really blanketed, easy example that's pretty common. Extended family support. So maybe there's someone in your household someone that does not live in your household that you financially support, like a grandparent or someone that lives overseas or in a different state, but you are financially supporting them. The FAFSA and the CSS profile have no way of knowing that that is an additional expense that you have. In that case, you would just reach out to your assigned counselor and kind of outline like, hey, I have some circumstances that have either just popped up or have kind of been ongoing that I haven't been able to outline. We would gather some additional documentation, and then we would recalculate the aid with those circumstances included. So like if that's $10,000 spent for extended family support over a year, essentially what we're doing is we're removing $10,000 from the income and recalculating the entire aid package with that reduced income amount. We don't have deadlines for that until we get kind of close to the end of the academic year, but definitely reach out to your counselor so that way we can give you the tools that we would need in order to go through that process.
And is there ever a situation in which like an appeal would not be approved or like a change would not be made?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of gray area, to be honest with you. I've heard a lot of circumstances, some that I feel like, I will say that if it's kind of like something that has popped up, like a medical expense or something like that, the likelihood of that getting denied is pretty low. I don't know if, there's situations where someone was like, oh yeah, I'm putting in a pool in the backyard and that's an additional expense. Like our committee might not approve that because it was an elected, financial burden. But for the most part, I mean, we're really generous and we're really understanding and we want to make this possible. So we do try to do as much as we can in order to make it work. Now, maybe there's a circumstance that we just cannot consider, like I had mentioned, if you're building a pool in their backyard or something like that. But maybe there are other things that you didn't think of that we can include, like during COVID, we had to rack up all of our credit card debt, or we racked up a ton of credit card debt because we were off work for, those, 5 or 6 months or whatever. We can exclude that as well. So definitely talk to your counselor because we would like to get to know the full picture and not just this one little tidbit. So that way, if we might not be able to help you with this one, there might be something else that we can wiggle in there.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving to some more kind of like general questions about aid. So do students have to reapply every semester or academic year for financial aid?
Yeah, so for need-based aid, we use the FAFSA and the CSS profile annually. So both of those profiles will have to be completed every single year. They both open up on October 1st for the following year. So this upcoming October, they will be open for the 25-26 academic year. When it comes to merit-based aid, if the student is receiving any merit-based aid, those dollar amounts are added and updated automatically. So there is no additional application process that you would need to go through for the merit-based side, but need-based aid is reviewed annually. And then of course, those circumstances don't roll over as well. So let's say I do an appeal for a family using X, Y, and Z circumstance. Next year, you'll have to present that information again, so that way we can make sure it's included if it's still an ongoing financial burden.
Does having another student in a university affect the amount of aid?
Absolutely. This is probably the biggest impact to financial aid on the need-based aid side in general. So when you have multiple students in college at the same time. Now, I'm going to be speaking on the CSS profile side of this because the FAFSA actually just got rid of the number in college allocation. Luckily, we base our institutional aid off of the CSS profile, so that is not a problem for us, although it might be if you have students at other colleges that are FAFSA only. But essentially, when you fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile, it generates a number, an expected family contribution number that the calculation says, based on your income, assets, household size, where you live, how many people are in college at the same time, this is how much they think that you can afford towards any college costs. Now, when you have two in college, your family contribution number is the same. The difference is that half of it goes to one student and half of it goes to the other student. So if only one of the students are coming here to WashU, you're really having a low contribution because it's only looking at one student. If both of your students are going to WashU at the same time, your total family contribution didn't actually change. It's just the fact that each of them being in college is kind of dividing their, contribution in half per se. So it definitely makes a big difference if you maybe have a student that's starting WashU and you have a junior in college. And let's say, the junior in college is going to graduate after a year. So the student that's starting here at WashU in their junior year is now going to lose out on financial aid because there won't be two in college anymore. So I always say that, keep that in mind in general when you're kind of looking at finances over the 4 full years. I know it's easy to kind of narrow in on year number 1 because that's what's prevalent and in our face. But as time goes on, if that other student drops out or graduates or leaves or anything like that, it will impact the financial aid eligibility because now that total contribution is only on one student instead of splitting in half.
Thank you. Okay, are there any types of scholarships or financial aid opportunities for students to apply to after they're accepted?
So at WashU, basically after you're done with the application process, there are no additional financial aid opportunities as far as scholarship from the university. So merit-based aid, for example, is determined when students are applying to WashU. Those students that were selected for merit-based aid, theirs is going to just refresh pretty much for all 4 undergraduate years. But if a student didn't get selected for any merit-based aid, unfortunately, there are no additional opportunities after that. Now, on the need-based aid side, let's say year 1, you didn't think you were going to qualify for need-based aid and you didn't apply. But then all of a sudden in year 3, maybe something came up and now you're like, now I really do want to apply for need-based aid. You just have to fill out a FAFSA and a CSS profile. Essentially, that is where we're going to determine the need-based aid eligibility from. So that's all we would need. But apart from that, there wouldn't be any additional like application process for any additional aid sources outside of those 2.
And can students receive financial aid for summer courses?
So WashU doesn't do the same institutional need-based aid during the summer as we do in the general semester times. Arts and Sciences does have something called the Summer Springboard Grant, which essentially is for students in Arts and Sciences that are behind in their program that need the summer in order to catch up. That is actually determined through that division. So we're just notified if a student has been awarded that or not. Apart from that, the only thing that students are eligible for is going to be in the form of their federal aid in the summer, which does include summer Pell if they're eligible for the Pell grant. But apart from the Pell grant, it would then be federal student loans that would be offered to help in any summer programs at WashU.
Great, thank you. Okay, we received a question specific to students that are receiving scholarships like urban scholars. How is the stipend distributed to those students? The 2,500, or I think it's 2,580, a different number now, but how is that stipend distributed to those students?
Yeah, it's actually just increased in the scholarship. So when the bill is produced, that additional stipend is just kind of added to both the fall and the spring semester. So when you're looking at the dollar amount, those urban scholars are receiving the tuition and I think it's one of the fees, if I'm not mistaken, and then that stipend on top of it, they're just getting that all lumped up into one urban scholarship. So it's kind of just giving them more in the regular scholarship.
Great. And then will the first year grant annual income eligibility of $75,000 or less change for the 2025 year?
As far as I know, no. We haven't heard anything apart from the 75,000 or less. I'm not sure if that's something that's like potentially going to be looked at going forward. But at least as of right now, a majority of the qualifying agents for a lot of the grants are going to be with that total family income of 75,000 or less. And that does include families that might have divorced parents or separated parents. It is going to look at both parents' income to determine that threshold of 75,000.
Thank you. Okay, a few questions about the PEP loans. So how soon do you recommend students and their families apply for the PEP loan?
So if they're looking at the multi-year option, first and foremost, actually, I think the deadlines in general for those are around November. So I do think that there's a cutoff. I think it's like November 5th, if I'm not mistaken. If you go to our website to apply for the PEP loan, it will say that that deadline, I believe, is November 5th. But anyway, you know, I would say order of operations would probably be 1, reach out to your assigned counselor, kind of just make sure that the aid and the bill kind of look what you were anticipating it to look, make sure that that health insurance has either been waived or kind of talk about options to help funding for that. And then I would say, you know, once you've kind of checked those boxes to make sure that there's nothing missing and there's no errors, then absolutely, yeah, the PEP is kind of just a great way or a great place to kind of start off with, especially if you're a parent and you know that you want to look at that option. But again, first, definitely make sure that all of the aid that you have has been applied, so that way you're not applying for more in a loan that you didn't actually need to borrow.
And then if someone is using a multi-year PEP financing option, can you talk to when they receive the funds for future semesters and when interest might begin to accrue?
Yeah, so I do know that the interest will start accruing as soon as the loan is dispersed. And then the monthly payment towards that loan would also start immediately as well. And it does have a standard repayment of 10 years. Essentially, like if you know that you're going to be financing, let's just say 4 years, for example, like you kind of want to get locked into today's rates, you want to benefit from that. Applying for that kind of now would be beneficial, especially because you already know you're not getting any aid for that. But as far as the interest rate goes, I'd have to double check what the interest rate is this year. We do have a PEP department that we can always reach out to just kind of double check. But the annual loan is 6.95% for the PEP, meaning you're applying for that loan on an annual basis. If you're looking at the multi-year loan, I believe that interest rate is 5.95%. For the multi-year, or if you're doing a combination of multi-year and prepay, but it also does have that standard 10-year repayment, and the interest will start accumulating immediately once it's dispersed.
And then last question specific to the PEP loan. So are families able to use that financing if they're in like an installment plan?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There are definitely families that kind of do a little bit of everything. So like, maybe they're getting, I'm going to use percentages. Maybe they're getting like 20% financial aid. Maybe they only want to finance like 50%. And then the remaining little bit, they want to set up an installment plans. You definitely can do that. As far as timing goes, the aid will always apply to the bill first. And then, you would want to set up a payment plan after you have your PEP loan established. Because when you go to sign up for the payment plan online, it's going to assume that you're going to want to pay whatever balance is remaining. So having that PEP applied first will then lower what that obligation is, and then you could set up a payment plan. Or, if you've been on a payment plan for, 5 months and you're like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm just going to do PEP, and you wind up doing PEP, you could just remove the payment plan at that point then, because it would cover what you would have been paying in monthly payments. So there's definitely a lot of flexibility with it.
Great, thank you. And we actually did get one more question specific to PEP loan payments. Can a 529 fund, or can 529 funds be used to make those loan payments?
Yeah, you definitely can. I would recommend reaching out to our PEP department. By the way, the email is just pepfinancial@woostel.edu. If you haven't already navigated to the website. But you can do that. If you have a 529 account, though, I would recommend talking to them about what the better option would look like if you were to do the prepay and the loan option. So that way you're kind of utilizing those 529 funds already kind of lumped in. And then that way you're borrowing less, because that 529 fund can be used as part of the prepayment. So depending on how much money you have in your 529 account, it might be beneficial to just kind of do the combination of the two instead of making monthly payments from the 529 account. But the PEP department would have to go over how to make those monthly payments, because I don't think that it can be as easy as like a wire transfer. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I think there's a specific way that you have to pay out of your 529 fund account, that there might be specific paperwork involved with that.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have our last question for the evening. So Jennifer, if the students, parents, and family members on tonight could take only one thing away from our conversation, what would you hope it is?
Don't be scared of us. I hear all the time from families that are receiving like full rides to families that receive no aid. It's really common to be a little bit intimidated because I know students that are maybe receiving a significant amount of aid are like, well, I don't want to ask for more because I'm really happy with what I've got and I don't want to mess that up. And then on the other side, it's like, well, I'm not going to qualify, so it's not even worth talking to them. Definitely reach out to us. If I could have one superpower in the world, it would be able to mind read, but unfortunately I don't have that. So there's no way that I can help unless you're reaching out to us. If you might think it's a dumb question, we're not going to think it's a dumb question. I would much rather you reach out to me and fix all of your problems in a 5-minute phone call than have you at home panicked, or just not getting the amount of aid that you should be getting. Same thing with like the scholarships and things like that. I'm definitely happy to take a look at everything for you to make sure that things are calculating correctly. Computers have errors, humans make errors. I would much rather you reach out to our office so that way we can try to help you versus thinking like, oh, they're not going to be any help, because that's really what we're here for. So just don't be scared of us.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. The information you provided was extremely helpful. I'm confident the incoming students and families that joined us tonight learned something new. So to those students and families, we hope you gained valuable information. As a reminder, you can find the recording of this webinar if you want to go back, re-listen to those answers, kind of go back through that presentation. It will be available on our families.wustl.edu webpage by the very beginning of next week, if not by the end of this week. And then stay tuned for our next webinar, which is a conversation about move-in and fall welcome. It is going to be on Tuesday, August 6th at 5:30 p.m. Central. And you can register for that webinar at that same website, families.wustl.edu. So we hope to see you all then, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.